Hi, this is Gadi Elkan with Selig Film News. We're here with Star Award recipient John Landis. John, it's such an honor to have you here in Dallas. And I know on behalf of the festival, you've been one of the more accommodating, really easy star recipients we've ever had. And so thank you for that. I think James Faust has a real simple line. He says, I called John and I asked him for something, and John just says simply, it's good for the festival, I can do it. And that accommodation is something that not every time do we get. So first of all, thank you for that.
Well, I support film festivals in general. It's a very strange, not strange, but different, evolving time in the movie business. And film festivals have become, in my opinion, essential, not just because they're fun, but there are so many independent films made now. And distribution is so wacky. It's evolved. It's a very strange time. It's very difficult to get a film in a theater.
Yeah.
And festivals have become the way that so often, the only way that many worthy movies are seen by an audience. Yeah. So I support film festivals.
Wow. Well, thank you.
Oh, please.
We appreciate it. Do you mind if I jump back to like 69? You're not even 20 yet, and you go do Kelly's Heroes in the middle of Yugoslavia. Like, what the hell was that like? That must have been so, life-changing as well as career-defining.
I had always, and I've said this stuff so much that it's like, I don't mean it's obnoxious, but it's true. When I was 8 years old, I saw a movie in a theater called The Seventh Voyage of Sinbad. It was a Ray Harryhausen film. And I had total suspension of disbelief. It was like, for a lot of kids, it's Star Wars, or for earlier generations, it could be King Kong or Casablanca or The Godfather or whatever it is. It's the movie where you go, wow, where you have that wonderful experience. And I went home and asked my mom, I said, who does that? Who makes the movie? And my mother said, the director. So literally from the time I was 8, that's what I wanted to be when I grew up. So all my energy was, I wanted to be a filmmaker. And at that time, in the 50s and 60s, it was unusual, especially for American kids, to want to be a filmmaker, to be a director. So I had that advantage because, and I lived in Los Angeles. I was born in Chicago, but my parents moved to LA when I was 4 months old. I was a surfer. In fact, when I made the Blues Brothers, Chicago was hometown boy, and I went, yes, I am. So all my energy was directed to becoming a filmmaker when I grew up, a director. So like when I was able to, I got a job in the mailroom at 20th Century Fox, and I just bothered every filmmaker I could, and because I was in Los Angeles, I met everybody from King Vidor to Henry Hathaway and Howard Hawks, and you name it, I met them. And you have to realize that the so-called movie brats, a little older than me, but Spielberg, Francis Coppola, Marty Scorsese, De Palma, those guys, George Lucas, we share that we all grew up with television. And television was our entree into old movies. Very rarely do they show old movies now on TV. I mean, there's TCM, but in the old days, it was all old movies. And so we were really exposed to film. And I'll make a long story short. So when I could get a job in a studio, I did. And a man named Andrew Marton, Bundy Marton, who was a Hungarian-American director. His most famous credit is probably directing The Chariot Race and Ben-Hur. But he was a wonderful director, and he was kind of my mentor. And he said, if you can get to Yugoslavia, if you can get to Belgrade, I can probably get you a job on the second unit on a movie called The Warriors, which became Kelly's Heroes. And so I lied to my mother and told her I had this job, and I'd been working for over a year in the mailroom, $60 a week, and I had about $8,000 by that time. And I'll never forget. It cost 800 and something dollars for a one-way TWA ticket from Los Angeles to London, which I bought and showed my mom. I had this ticket, and my mother saw the ticket. Well, then I must have the job, or I wouldn't have the ticket. Years later, I told that story on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. I was promoting a movie many years later, and my mother called me up, furious. You lied to me. Mom, I'm very successful. I've made a lot of hit movies. I don't care. You lied to me. I was in terrible trouble. Anyway, I flew to London. I was an idiot. I had no idea that London and Belgrade weren't like it took me a while to get to Belgrade. But luckily for me, unluckily for MGM, the production was chaos. Clint Eastwood, Telly Savalas, Don Rickles, Don Sutherland, Carol O'Connor, the Yugoslav army. We were blowing things up, and it was a big World War II action comedy. And it's probably the best experience of my life, because I had all the pleasure of a huge production and none of the responsibility, you know. I started as a gopher, which now they're called production assistants. But you're a schlepper, you know, you go for this, you go for that. And I ended up being an AD. I became essential on the productions because it was mostly Europeans and they all hated each other. And so I had a great time, and I was in Yugoslavia 9 months. It was a great experience.
That's so cool. And I mean, you and Don, I mean, you've done a documentary about it.
Oh, Don Rickles? Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Oh, and Clint, and not, you know, Animal House would not have gotten the green light except for Ned Tannen, the head of Universal, was very unhappy with my cast because most of my cast had never made movies before. He was like, who the hell are these guys? And the straw that broke the camel's back is when I hired John Vernon to be Dean Wormer. He was like, what the hell are you doing? He was so upset. So he said, if you don't get a movie star, and I mean a movie star, you're over. Wow. So the only like big movie star I knew who was appropriate is I called Don Sutherland. I said, Donald, you've got to do this for me. He said, do what? I said, you have to be in this movie. What movie? You know? And in fact, it's a famous story, but Don, who wonderfully said yes, the part in the script was only one scene, so I had Doug Kenny quickly write 2 more scenes, and so we had Don for a day and a half.
Wow.
And that's how the movie got a green light. Because he was a big star at that time.
Yeah, I mean, he was all over the place in the 70s. It's interesting, that back end of the 70s, you basically just took over the world. I mean, you had Kentucky Fried Movie, kind of get that, okay, here's the craziest shit we can come up with type stuff. And then it was like hit, hit, hit. What was that like for you? I mean, you were still young. And
well, I was 27 when I made Animal House and Kentucky Fried Movie. I mean, Kentucky Fried Movie got me Animal House. It's still amazing. This would never happen today. But I got the job on Animal House from Kentucky Fried before it was released.
Wow. Because
it actually came out and made a lot of money, but I mean, that's extraordinary. But Animal House was a very low budget, $2 million movie that they had no I mean, it was like the next lowest budget movie Universal made that year was $9 million. So it was a very low end thing. And to give you an idea, I asked for a Chapman crane. We shot in Eugene, Oregon at the University of Oregon. And for the parade, I wanted a Chapman, this piece of equipment. So they drove it up, and I had the Chapman for the first day of the parade. And the second day, it wasn't there. I said, where's my crane? They drove it back to L.A. because they wanted to use it on the Incredible Hulk television show. Far more important than my show. So, but and then we did the Blues Brothers, and that gave me the clout to do An American Werewolf in London, which I had written in 1969 on Kelly's Heroes. In fact, after the Blues Brothers, you know, I made a movie called Into the Night.
With Jeff Goldblum.
And Michelle Pfeiffer, yeah. And that movie was a complete failure. And that really took me back because I did everything I usually do. I was very surprised. It was like I wasn't prepared. But I've been very lucky. I've had a lot of successful pictures.
You know, you said earlier about how you were impacted by TV. I think my generation, we were impacted by, you know, film much more. And like, I think it was '88 when Coming to America came out.
I have no idea. I don't even remember.
I think I was young, but Coming to America was one of my first experiences because I was born in Israel, came to America, and my older brother's like, let's go check out the story of the guy coming from the foreign country. What was the experience of getting to know Eddie and what was it?
Well, I'd made Trading Places with
before
Eddie
with Dan, yeah,
many years before.
Yeah,
8 years before Coming to America. And no, Eddie, when I met him, was 19 or 20 and just bouncing off the walls, filled with energy and just raw talent. And he was delightful. We had a great time. On Trading Places, he was still on Saturday Night Live, so I only had him 3 days a week.
wow.
You know, we shot in Philadelphia and New York. But he was great. And then when I made Coming to America later, he was at a different place in his life and kind of a pain in the ass, but still brilliant. Great to work with. I mean, a lot of that movie's improvised. And then I made one more movie with Eddie that unfortunately is not a very good movie. Made money, but not a very good movie, that Beverly Hills Cop 3. And then, but Eddie's extraordinary. I mean, his genius is mimicry. If you give him a character or something to mimic, he can do it perfectly. Kind of extraordinary.
I know you're a big fan of monster movies, and
Some of them, yeah.
yeah. I mean, you've written books about this subject.
I wrote a book, Monsters in the Movies.
It's a pretty big book, though. I mean, what was it about being scared, or maybe the element of a monster that caught your eye? Or
You know, it's not so much being scared. First of all, I'm a sucker. I'm a good audience. I mean, I remember, what was the movie? I think it was The Descent. Neil's movie. I went to see The Descent. And I spent the whole thing like, you know, I'm a sucker. It's not the fear as much as the suspension of disbelief. It's all boys like monsters. The girls like Barbie, boys like Godzilla. You know, that's, you know. And I think King Kong was an essential, the original King Kong was an essential movie for me, and Mighty Joe Young, and certainly all the work of Ray Harryhausen. You know, it's fantasy. And it's odd because so much of what, you know, guys like me used to, with Famous Monsters, the magazine, and science fiction and all this stuff, so much of what was fringe is now completely mainstream. And it's sort of this sea change that the studios are now, you know, making these B movies with gigantic budgets, and it's kind of wacky.
can you comment more about that? I mean, the system does seem like it's completely changed from what you guys created.
Well, I was very lucky to come into so-called Hollywood, which doesn't mean anything, but into the studio system, which is gone, at a time when directors, the filmmaker was given a lot of respect. If you look at the movies of Robert Altman, so many movies, Hal Ashby, Paul Mazursky, so many of the filmmakers, those movies would never be made now by a studio. In fact, half of the films I made would never be made now by a studio. They are risk adverse. And it has a lot to do with, and that's just not just true in the film business, it's true in, I think, in general. It has to do with conglomerates and corporations and evolving platforms, because it's, you know, kind of chaotic out there with the internet and nobody really knows what's going on. But I came along at a time in the business where filmmakers were given respect by the studios. It's not true at all anymore. I mean, it's all by committee now, and it's different. It's one of the reasons why when you look at the better films the last few years, they're almost always independents, you know. And it's a different time.
And you brought up that festivals have impacted independence.
Well, they will have impacted. Festivals are now the best way for an independent filmmaker to get his film up in front of an audience. And ironically, festivals, which started out as these, you know, I don't know if you know the history of the film festival, do you?
I'm guessing it's Redford and Sundance and that before that?
Oh, how embarrassing.
Enlighten me.
Uh-oh. The first and oldest film festival in the world is the Venice Film Festival, which was started by Mussolini, who, like all good fascists, understood the power of film.
Control.
And, well, message. And not so much control as propaganda. And also Italy's land of opera. And, you know, he built Cinecittà. In any case, film festivals used to be almost always started by the Chamber of Commerce. The Cannes Film Festival was a way for Cannes, the seaside resort, to get movie stars and glamour, and it was all about promoting Cannes. And then Cannes was so successful, it evolved into a marché, or what's called a market, where you did a lot of business at Cannes, buying and selling foreign rights and things at Cannes. And then it's very interesting. I don't know if you know this, but a lot of film festivals are now for profit. South by Southwest, Tribeca, Independent Film Awards. These guys are making money with your movie. But still I support them because it's a way to get the film in front of an audience and sell it now. Now film festivals have become important markets. But even more important for me, it's an audience can see a movie correctly. A movie should be seen on a big screen with an audience. They're communal experiences. And the truth is, a scary movie is far more frightening geometrically with the crowd. A funny movie is much funnier with more people because laughter and fear are contagious. A sad movie is sadder. An exciting movie is more exciting. I mean, that's the way it works. Plus, you want to see it big, the way it's meant to be seen, and sound right. And you know, most people see their movies on their laptops now, and it's just changed. I mean, I'll never forget Thriller. I made this thing Thriller it was for theatrical release. It was a short, and then it went out. You know, it's home video and all that stuff. But it was the very first thing they sold to download on your cell phone. And, you know, you go to all this trouble and people are watching, you know, so I did the Thriller, like, they're this big. It was like, oh, shit. But it's just evolution. It's just changing. So film festivals, there are all kinds of reasons that people put on film festivals. And I support most of them because, man, you know, if you can get somebody's movie shown, it's important.
Is it fun? Deborah's out here as well.
Deborah's teaching a class as we speak.
Is it fun to come out? Because, I mean, she's impacted culture on a whole nother level. I mean, coming to America, she got great recognition for what she did there. But I think, I mean,
Deborah designed Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Indiana Jones look is hers.
All of my films, you know. I mean, it's most of my films. And I mean, she's worked for Louis Malle and Costa Gavras, and Deborah's had this incredible career, and then got her PhD and got many great books, and she's extraordinary, my wife. Just absolutely amazing.
Is it fun to be out here with her? I mean, is it fun to?
Well, we always
go together.
No, not always. In fact, she was just in Helsinki at a conference,
oh, wow.
and I was working in LA. But Deborah and I, we always have we're good travelers. I'm a good tourist, and we like travel. And to be candid, the first bunch of film festivals we used to go to was to get free first class tickets to wherever it was, and you know. But I don't do them as much anymore. I don't do them because, I mean, this morning on Good Morning Texas, they introduced me as legendary filmmaker John Landis. Legendary. So that means I never existed. You know, it's like, what? It's like, but still, it's strange sometimes. But I agreed to this because it would, you know, James, what's his name? Faust called me, and in talking to him, he wanted to show the Blues Brothers, 35th anniversary of the Blues Brothers. That's a strange film and one that I'm proud of, but, you know, like all my movies, I just see the mistakes. But still, that movie has such good music and came from such a good place because it's very unusual. It's Dan Aykroyd and John Belushi exploiting their own celebrity to focus attention on those great acts and that great music on rhythm and blues music. And, it's amazing how successful it was that way.
What was it like having, Aretha and Cab? They seem to be enjoying it so much themselves. What was that like?
Wonderful. They were all wonderful. You have to realize 1979, it was all ABBA and the Bee Gees.
Yeah.
It was disco. And other than other than Ray Charles, who was doing very well doing country western music at the time, Motown rhythm and blues was kind of over. So for us to get those people was easy. You called them. Really? Yes. Bam, I'm there, And everybody, they all, if you read their autobiographies, they all talk about what the film did for them. These are people, brilliant artists with great careers, but at that time sort of the fact that it was going away. And the movie did, regardless, I won't say anything about the quality of the film because it's so wacky, but what it did do very successfully, and John Belushi and Dan Aykroyd did, was bring back attention to blues and rhythm and blues in a way that was impactful and has not ceased. And, John Lee Hooker, to give you an idea, it's so hard to believe now, but when we shot John Lee Hooker live on Maxwell Street, that's live, at Pinetop Perkins, astonishing people. Muddy Waters was supposed to be there. He got the flu. I was devastated because we had to shoot that. Couldn't come. But when we made that movie, Universal, who made the movie, and MCA Records, Decca Records, they didn't want the soundtrack. They said, who would buy this music?
Oh, it's just James Brown and Aretha and Cab and
they said we don't want it. What the hell is this? And what was interesting was Atlantic, which had had huge success with so-called race music and stuff. I had a big fight with Ahmet Ertegun because he refused to put John Lee Hooker on the album. If you get the soundtrack, and the soundtrack went double platinum, thank God, but John's not on the album.
Can you tell us why that?
He felt, in his words, he was too old and too black. Those were his words. And what was fascinating about it was 2 years or 3 years later, John Lee Hooker had a platinum album. Wow. And I called up Ahmet Ertegun, and he said, before you say anything, I know, thank you. He hung up like that.
Wow. Well, I guess the final question, John. Since you have traveled all over the place, how do you travel? Like, what does John do when he's getting ready? What do you pack? Do you search for stuff you're going to do in a city? Do you think, come to Dallas, I got to tackle this, I haven't been here,
Well, I'm only here 2 days, so I know I'm going, when I finish all this publicity stuff, we have a couple of hours, and I want to see the new Perot Museum.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm embarrassed, I forgot the name, but there's a famous sculpture.
Nasher sculpture.
We want to see that. I've been to Dallas before, several times. But I think we'll have time to do that, and then the rest of it's the festival, and I'm leaving early Sunday morning. But I'm a good tourist. In fact, it was funny on all the films I've made. You go scouting locations, and my production designers and assistant directors, production managers would always like, oh no, because if I'm going to be in a place for the first time, we're seeing everything. I'm going to every museum. I'm going to every historic site. I want to see everything. It's one of the pleasures. The truth, one of the great bonuses of filmmaking is travel and access. Because when you're shooting like the Blues Brothers in Chicago, or Trading Places in Philadelphia, or American Werewolf in London, or you're shooting in a city, you have an amazing access. You can go places and see things that most people will never see or can't go to. And that's a great and exciting perk of making movies.
Do you mind if I ask just one last question about that? What is the wildest thing you've gotten access to? Or place? What's the experience where you're like, I'm going to try this, and holy crap, they let me in?
Well, I've pulled off some pretty outrageous stuff. Daley Plaza and the Blues Brothers was pretty outrageous. But, the Blues Brothers, it's before CG and stuff. So I just saw Faster and Furious 30 or whatever it is, and there's a whole sequence where cars are being dropped out of airplanes and stuff. But it's different now because you can do all these things. In the Blues Brothers, when those Nazis go off the bridge, we dropped a Pinto 1,400 feet from a helicopter in downtown Chicago. You know, I mean, that's real. And all those cars, we had 44 cars going 110 miles an hour in downtown Chicago. No speeded up film. I mean, we were able to do outrageous things. I mean, they were like, it was like a military operation. We had like 400 PAs. You had to have someone stationed at every alley and street and thing, you know, for a mile and a half to get up to speed. I mean, it was nuts. And most of that was done early in the morning on weekends and things like that. But and also the werewolf attack in Piccadilly Circus was a big deal at the time. Now things have changed, things have opened up a lot, but to pull off certain things. I mean, the most outrageous thing I think I ever did, you won't think it's outrageous, but in Coming to America, there's a scene in front of the Waldorf Astoria on Park Avenue. And I thought, gee, I'd love to get the cars pulling out, making a U-turn and going up Park toward Grand Central, but, you know, I only have permission to be right here. So I said to my cops, my New York cops, is there any way I can stop traffic on Park Avenue? And they look around like this. You know, so like, that was pretty outrageous. We just shut down New York for only about 10 minutes. But to get that big shot of the crane pulls back and they get in the car, and I mean, that was outrageous.
Well, John, thank you so much for the stories, and I can't wait for people to see the Blues Brothers at Texas Theater. It's going to be exciting tomorrow. Thank you so much.
I know the music's good, so thank you.
And I won't call you legendary.
Thank you.